Well, hey there, you awesome bipeds, quadrupeds, and even the occasional dinosaurs. It is I, Little Wolf, and welcome to my den. Go ahead and come on in, but please wipe your paws before entering, and go ahead and take a seat by the fire. The cauldron is bubbling, so you can have your choice of tea, coffee, or hot chocolate. And at this point, it is now Thursday, and I had tried to make something for Wednesday, but it just didn't seem to really work out. And I wasn't too sure what to do, but I had figured it had been a while since I read any stories, and I was able to find 3 different ones that could give you at least a half-hour break from your day, and I hope it does help you out quite a bit. I know you do enjoy when I do read stories, and I'm told my voice is very nice, so I take that as a very good compliment. And I know it definitely helps, and if you ever feel like you need help, please hit me up on either my Lil Wolf's Den or my Swordsmen Discord. And if I'm not available, please sit down with any of my friends in those groups and have a talk with them, and they'll more than likely be willing to listen to your problems and point you in the right direction to get you help. But if you don't think you can do that or talk to any of your friends or family, please feel free to give the U.S. Suicide Hotline number a call if you're in the States. And that number is 1-800-273-8255. Once again, that's 1-800-273-8255. And if you're into texting more, you can hit them up at 741-741. And if you're outside of the United States, which is everybody else out there, you can always hit up the website suicide.org/international-suicide-hotlines.html. And they'll give you a list of all the other countries out there with websites and numbers that you can get a hold of people if you feel the need to. Alright, so like I said, I was able to find some different creepypastas out there, and they're pretty short, so I found 3 different ones. And I think the first one I'm going to start off with is It Began as a Drip. And in this one, a young man has a leaky roof after the rainy season starts, and he tries to get a hold of his landlord and a person to fix it. But things do not go as planned. So let's go ahead and jump into that one and see what happens. It started as a leak. The rainy season began in the early summer, and June had been no exception. It was no surprise to the man when he discovered rainwater dripping from his dining room ceiling. Shrugging it off, he placed a tall pot beneath the leak and expected it to stop on his own. However, it continued to rain, and before he knew it, the pot would threaten to overflow. He would dump the water out first thing in the morning, and straight after he returned home from work. Eventually, he began to notice the water damage at the source of the leak. The white ceiling had discolored, turning to a dull shade of brown. He checked the Weather Channel and realized that it would continue to rain sporadically over the next 10 days. The man was worried about the ceiling mildewing and becoming an expensive repair. So he called a local handyman. Unfortunately, the man could not sign to have the repairs done, only his landlord could. It was a frustrating policy. The man called his landlord but could not reach him. He left him a few voicemails detailing how the damage was becoming progressively worse. The man was clueless as to why his landlord would not return his calls. They usually kept in touch, speaking at least twice a month. Finally, he reasoned that he would not be held accountable for any damages sustained. One night, the man was startled awake by a massive thump. He quickly turned on his bedside lamp, and just vaguely he could see the overturned table and a large shape laying across it. He sprinted out of his apartment and called the police, gagging at the smell. The man sat at the police station with a blanket wrapped around him and his shoulders and a coffee mug resting in his hands. He did know one thing. There had been a dead body in the ceiling, and the water had saturated it so badly that it caved under the weight. So far, the body was unidentifiable due to the rainwater and was being autopsied. While the man waited, he called his landlord and finally reached him, panicking as he explained the situation. His landlord was just as alarmed, and the man pleaded with him to come to the police station while he made his statement. The man paused as a detective crossed over to him and lowered his phone, wondering if the body had been identified. His blood ran cold immediately, and he shook his head with terror. The body belonged to Richard Thompson, his landlord, and had been dead for over a year. That was not what disturbed him most. If his landlord was dead, then who was pretending to be him? Well, that was definitely a weird way to have things happen, especially when you're trying to get your house worked on and fixed up and everything else, and it turns out the person you thought was your landlord isn't your landlord. And that can always be kind of creepy. Kind of like in the movie The Visit, when these kids go to visit and stay with their grandparents, and they later on find out that they're not their grandparents, but people that escaped from the local insane asylum. But this one was a little bit weirder since it was a dead body and not exactly knowing who the person on the other end of the phone was. Definitely a fun story. Okay, so the next one I found that I thought would be kind of fun was my last babysitting job. And in this one, there's a young student that's going to college that wants to be able to have a flexible job where she can concentrate on school when need be, and also make some money on the side to be able to get things done as she needs. And everything goes well for the first bit of her job, and later on down the road, a weird thing does happen, and she kind of sees a doppelganger of the person she's working for. And so let's jump into the babysitting world and see what happens. My last night babysitting. After much wavering and second guessing, I finally bit the bullet and returned to graduate school last fall. I'm sure several of you know how difficult it is to juggle a rigorous PhD program and a full-time job. I'm going to need a small source of income, but wanted something that would allow school to be my first priority. As luck would have it, a good friend of mine knew a family in desperate need of a quality babysitter. Their current sitter had recently graduated high school and was heading out of state for college. Initially, I felt a little odd accepting work as a babysitter. After all, I was in my mid-20s, a PhD student, and engaged to be married. But hell, the hours were flexible, the money was fantastic, and I could anticipate a great deal of solid study hours after the toddler was sleeping soundly. To be quite honest, it was smooth sailing from the start. The family was overwhelmingly generous with their money, and their 3-year-old daughter Allison was quite well behaved, even in all her mischievous toddler glory. Over the next few months, I found myself there several times a week, mostly relieving her mother, Renee, in the afternoons so she could run errands and catch a coffee break. I occasionally sat on Saturdays so the parents could enjoy a date to the movies. Wasn't especially fond of the weekend night shifts, especially because the family lived in a large home, high in the mountains, surrounded by acres and acres of trees. During the day, their heavily wooded property was serene and majestic, but once darkness fell, it was eerie in its silence. I tried not to pay attention to the rustling of small forest animals brushing past bushes, or the sharp snaps of tree branches as the wind went through the nightly weaving. Mostly I tinkered around on my laptop, or buried my nose in a textbook until I was relieved to go home. Everything changed this past February. It was an especially cold Saturday morning. I was due to babysit around 7 that night. Renee's husband Eric was out of town on business, and she was excited to share a night out with her girlfriends. Armed with a backpack of heavy reading, I had my fiancé Mark drop me off as he went to the gym. The night was mellow. Heated up some frozen pizza, drew a bath with an embarrassing amount of bubbles and Elmo toys, and had the kid in bed by 8. I had an exam the following Tuesday and admittedly had a lot of studying to conquer. My fiancée arrived around 9:50, about 10 minutes before I was expecting Renee back home. Right at 10 o'clock, and I mean right on the nose, we heard footsteps on the wraparound deck and noted Renee making her way to the front door. I remembered finding it funny that I had been concentrating so hard I hadn't even heard her Suburban drive up. Mark and I exchanged annoying glances as Renee made her way to a living room where we sat. It appeared she might have had a glass or two of wine too much that evening because she had this intoxicating, frozen grin on her face. At first, I chalked it up to booze, but then the grin remained. I started to feel uncomfortable, the way an unknown stranger staring from across a restaurant can make you feel. Renee was usually very chatty, perhaps even a bit ditzy, but tonight her answers were short, but still polite enough. I began to gather my things as my fiancé continued a game of solitaire on his phone. Renee sat at the oak dining table, that bizarre and unsettling grin still plastered on her face, and wrote me out a check. There was something painfully uncanny about her movements. They were rigid, forced, almost animatronic. By the time we got down the driveway, my fiancé and I both had a baffled look on our faces. Renee stood in the window, smiling down at us, waving her hand back and forth. I gave a short nod and waved, keeping my eyes on the gravel. That discomfort wasn't letting go. We walked past Renee's silver Suburban, taking note at how absolutely dusty it was. Especially strange for someone who seemed to take her car in for a wash at least once a week. I traced my finger across the passenger door absent-mindedly, leaving a light coat of soot on the pad of my index finger. The car was filthy, like it had been through the elements. Where the hell did she go tonight? Through a sandstorm? I joked. Seriously, Mark trailed off. I'm not the only person who found the whole thing weird, right? I asked, attempting to keep my voice to a whisper. Oh, relax, she's probably just tipsy. Her smile, though, he said, closing the driver door. We began our trek down the winding road towards after a long night of babysitting out of the boonies, what I always like to call sweet, sweet civilization. The drive from the house to the freeway was dark, lined with redwoods and deer, which I usually quite enjoyed. Tonight it seemed endless. I had this overwhelming new desire to be on the highway surrounded by other cars, amongst other drivers and passengers heading into a city. We drove for what seemed too long. Something wasn't right. I reached for my phone and glanced at the time. Where we were usually passing the first gas station by now. I pawed at the handle of my purse and for the first time noticed the bag's weight. Ugh. I totally forgot my textbook. Reluctant to turn around when we had already been driving for so long, I made amends with the fact that I absolutely needed that textbook if I had any chance of rocking my exam. Mark let out a groan as he swung the wheel, turning back the way we came. Climbing the hill to Renee's house, I saw the Suburban was no longer in the driveway. She must have moved it into the garage for the night already. As we made our way to the deck, I saw the burgundy spine of my textbook on the couch that was through the sliding glass door. I continued to the front door and knocked 3 times. No answer. I knocked again, and then tried the door handle. Unlocked, as I usually left it while Renee and her husband were out. I made our way into the house, making sure to keep our footsteps quiet. Sorry, it's just me. I forgot my book, I said, trying to keep my voice down. My fiancée was a few steps behind me and peeking around the corner. Her bedroom door is open, but the lights are off, Mark said, a confused look spreading across his face. Renee? I asked, a little louder this time. Renee, it's me. Are you awake? Silence. We walked through the kitchen and I noticed the answering machine was blinking. I hadn't noticed it before I had left. There hadn't been any calls that night. I'm not exactly sure what compelled me to press play on the recorder, especially when, for all I knew, Renee and Allison were both asleep and could be rudely awakened. My fingers seemed to hover over the button for a mere second before I pushed it in, rather aggressively. When I heard what was on the recorder, has never left me. The timestamp of the message was 10:14. We had left the house at about 5 after 10. Hey, sweetie, it's Renee. There is some kind of holdup on the highway here. Maybe an accident or road work. I'll probably be about a half hour later than expected. I'm so sorry. Help yourself to some dessert while you wait. Hope Allison didn't give you too much grief tonight. Her voice sounded cheery, normal, real. I looked at Mark. My heart sunk. My eyes fluttered with tears. Allison? I managed to sputter. Mark disappeared up the staircase to Allison's room, taking the steps 3 at a time. After a painful long minute, he sauntered down the stairs, much slower than he ascended them. She's fine, sleeping soundly, Mark said without emotion. Mark and I found our way to the living room, where we sat without eye contact or conversation until Renee pulled up in the driveway. She seemed exhausted, glad to be home, and off the congested road. She chattered on about her evening, wrote me a check with a generous tip, thanked me for my patience, and smiled, the kind of smile that seemed absolutely genuine, and slowly faded once socially acceptable. We stumbled down to our car in a daze, passing Renee's Suburban, which was still gleaming from the recent trip to the car wash. I never had the heart to tell Renee what happened that evening. I also never found the first check that I got from the grinning woman. I ended up canceling my next 2 shifts, feigning sickness. Finally, I emailed Renee telling her that my program was getting especially intense, and that I didn't think it best to continue sitting for them. She bought the story, and now I'm free. Free from the darkness that enveloped the home in the mountains, where I once met a woman who wouldn't stop smiling. Now, it may have been a while since I've ever had to babysit a child or anything like that, but as you know, in my video from a bit ago had the baby in yellow having a very strange occurrences happen while babysitting. And if you haven't seen that video just yet, you might have some fun if you watch it. So go ahead and step back a couple of videos and see what happens there. And babysitting has always been kind of a stressful job. And just having these supernatural occurrences happen during that time makes it even more of a pain. Alright, so let's jump into our last story, and this has to be kind of one of my favorite creepypastas out there, and it's called The Disappearance of Ashley, Kentucky. And in this one, there's a really huge natural event that happens where an earthquake happens over the town of Ashley. And later on, when the authorities from the town next door go and check on them, they find a huge fissure in the ground where Ashley once stood, and all of the residents are gone. But as they go back through the week leading up to the earthquake, there are many different occurrences that happen. There's a black opening in the sky that keeps getting bigger and bigger. There's a strange fire that's in the distance that people can see. And people are somehow returning from the dead and walking around and can be seen. Or someone's family member is talking to another family member that has passed away. And just the idea of this kind of thing ever happening in real life type thing, even just like the idea of a town being wiped off of the face of the earth, kind of like what happened to, what was it, Pitcher, when a big tornado went through and just demolished the whole town. And it was so bad that fixing it up would just be way more than it would be worth, so Pitcher is no longer an actual town. So let's go ahead and jump in here and see what happens in Ashley, Kentucky. The Disappearance of Ashley, Kansas. Sometime during the night of August 16th, 1952, the small town of Ashley, Kansas, ceased to exist. At 3:29 a.m. on August 17th, 1952, a magnitude 7.9 earthquake was measured by the United States Geological Survey. The earthquake, it seemed, was felt throughout the state and most of the Midwest. The epicenter was determined to be directly under Ashley, Kansas. When state law enforcement arrived at what should have been the outskirts of the farming community, they found a smoldering, burning fissure in the earth measuring 1,000 yards in length and approximately 500 yards in width. The depth of the fissure was never determined. After 12 days, the statewide and local search for the missing 679 residents of Ashley County was called off by the Kansas City government at 9:15 p.m. on the night of August 29, 1952. All 679 residents were assumed to be dead. At 2:29 a.m. on August 30th, 1952, a magnitude 7.5 earthquake was measured by the United States Geological Survey. The epicenter was situated under what used to be the location of Ashley, Kansas. When the law enforcement investigated at 5:32 a.m., they reported that the fissure in the earth had closed. In the 8 days leading up to the disappearance of the town and its 679 residents, bizarre and unexplainable events were reported by dozens of the residents in Ashley, Kansas, and law enforcement from the surrounding area. On the evening of August 8, 1952, at 7:13 p.m., a resident by the name of Gabrielle Jonathan reported a strange sighting in the sky above Ashley. The town itself, having no official branch of law enforcement, called into the police station of the neighboring town of Hayes. Gabrielle reported what appeared to be a small black opening in the sky. Within the next 15 minutes, the Hayes police station became overwhelmed with dozens of phone calls, all reporting the same phenomenon. The phenomena was never reported by any neighboring communities. A decision was made to send a trooper to Ashley to investigate the matter the following morning. At 7:54 a.m. on the morning of August 9th, 1952, Hayes officer Alan Mace radioed to the Hayes police station. He reported that despite following the one road leading into Ashley, he became lost. According to his report, the road continued along its normal path, but somehow ended up back in Hayes. Officer Mace went and added that the road never curved or bent in any direction. At 9:15 a.m., 7 of the town's 10 police cars all sent an investigation to the situation, and all members of the team came to the same conclusion. The only road leading into Ashley stopped leading into Ashley, but instead led back to Hayes. Phone calls continued to pour into the Hayes police station, all reporting that the black opening in the sky continued to grow in size. All callers were advised to remain inside and to not travel outside unless absolutely necessary. At 8:17 p.m., Mrs. Elaine Cantor reported her neighbors, Mr. and Mrs. Milton, and their 2 children, Jeffrey and Brooke, missing. According to Mrs. Cantor's phone call, the Miltons attempted to leave town in their family car earlier in the evening. They never returned. Law enforcement officials from Hayes never reported the car or individuals coming up on the one-way road. At 7:39 a.m. on the morning of August 10, 1952, phone calls from Ashley into the Hayes police station reported that the town was in total darkness. The sun had never risen. At 10:15 a.m., at the request of Hayes law enforcement, a helicopter from Topeka, Kansas, flew over the region in which Ashley, Kansas stood. The town was never observed from the air. At 12:43 p.m. on the afternoon of August 12, 1952, Mrs. Phoebe Daniel Whiskey called into the Hayes police station. She reported that her daughter Erica began to have conversations with her father, who died years prior in a drunk driving accident. To add to her concern, she reported that Erica was attempting to go outside into the dark to, quote-unquote, join them. Over the course of the next 12 hours, a reported 329 phone calls were placed into the Hayes police station, all describing similar phenomenon with the children of the town. The following morning, on August 12, 1952, the situation became dire. During the middle of the night, all 217 children in the town of Ashley, Kansas, disappeared. A reported 421 phone calls were placed into the Hayes Police Department. Unable to be of any useful assistance, Hayes law enforcement instructed all callers to remain inside and to avoid any and all attempts at finding the missing children. At 5:19 p.m. on the evening of August 13, 1952, Ashley elderly man Scott Luntz reported the glowing distant fire to his south. According to his description, the fire seemed to turn the distinct black into bright and red-orange that seemed to extend high into the sky. Throughout the rest of the day, calls continued in, stating that the fire, in addition to moving north, now seemed to come out of the black sky. No fire was ever witnessed by any of the neighboring communities or law enforcement officials. The reports continued until 12:09 a.m. on the morning of August 14, 1952. The last phone call, placed by a Mr. Benjamin Endicott, reported that the fire in the sky had grown so immense that it began to appear as daytime over the town. The phone call ended abruptly. From the phone call placed by Benjamin Sherman Endicott. Benjamin, just hold on. Wait. Yeah, I see something. It's to the south. It looks like... End of phone call. The next phone call wouldn't be placed until the following evening. The following is the entire transcript of the final phone call to be received by the Hayes Police Department out of the town of Ashley, Kansas. It was placed at 9:46 p.m. on the evening of August 15th, 1952. In this recorded phone call, the officer on duty is Officer Peter Welsh. The caller has been identified as Miss April Foster. Beginning phone call. Officer Welsh Hayes. Hayes Police Department. Hello? Foster. Yes? Hello? Officer Welsh. Ma'am, who am I speaking with? Foster. My name is April Foster. Please, sir, come help me. Officer Welsh. What is happening, ma'am? Foster. Last night, they came back. Officer Welsh. Ma'am, I'm going to need you to... Last night they came back! Cries. Officer Welsh. Ma'am, I'm going to need you to calm down and speak clearly. What happened? Who came back? Foster, sobbing. Everyone! Officer Welsh. Everyone? Foster. They all came in the fire. Officer Welsh. What do you mean, everyone? Foster. My son. I saw him last night. He was walking down the street. He was burned. Jesus Christ, he was burned! Officer Welsh. Ma'am, Foster. He died last year. I raised him since he was a baby. It was just me and him. I told him to watch for cars when he rode his bike, but he never wanted to listen. Officer Welsh. Ma'am, what you're saying doesn't make any sense. You said everyone came back. Foster. Are you fucking listening to me? Everyone. Everyone came back. Everyone who died or went missing. They're back, and they're looking for us. He said, Mommy, I'm okay now. See, I can walk again. Where are you? Mommy, I want to see you. Officer Welsh. Ma'am, where are you now? Are you safe? Foster. I'm hiding, just like everyone else. We saw them coming through the fields, and some people opened their doors for them. God, the screams. I don't know what happened to them, but their houses caught fire and they caved in. I have my curtains drawn. I'm hiding in the closet right now, and... Officer Welsh. Ma'am, is everything alright? Are you okay? Ma'am? Foster. Glass breaking. Oh my God! Officer Welsh. Ma'am? Foster. Something just came in! Officer Welsh. Ma'am, just stay as quiet as you can. Don't make a sound. Foster. Muffled. Mommy. He came inside. Officer Welsh. Stay absolutely still. Don't leave. Foster. Sounds of muffled footsteps. Muffled. Mommy. Where are you hiding? Officer Welsh, stay quiet. Foster, sounds of heavy footsteps. Laughter, muffled. I found you, Mommy. Indistinct screaming and noise. Officer Welsh, ma'am? Ma'am? End phone call. The following morning at 6:55 a.m., the law enforcement officials of the Hayes Police Department arrived at the location of Ashley Candace. A smothering, burning future, and the earth was all that remained. Alright, so with that story now out of the way, all three stories have been told, and our time in the den is coming to an end. I know not all the stories were completely scary or terrifying, but they're also those kind of stories where once you sit back and think about them, it kind of tickles at the back of your brain with how kind of freaky it can be with different things that happen. I mean, finding the body of your landlord in your ceiling, having a weird animatronic doppelganger of the person you work for coming through and paying you money and just being completely unsettling. That would just be so weird. But, like I said, with my favorite one being the Ashley story, having a town wiped out and having different things happen where it's documented from the neighboring town's police department having different reports happen. Just having all those unsettling events happen and then suddenly something very catastrophical, whatever kind of word that would be, that would just be very unsettling. Kind of also what happened like in the Mothman prophecies, having all of the different weird sightings of the Mothman, the weird UFO sightings, and then suddenly having the bridge collapse and weird predictions leading up to that happening. It's a very unsettling story, whether it's true or not. And some of these stories, when you sit back and think about them, I think might have the same kind of effect. But I hope you did enjoy, and I hope you had a fun time listening to these stories in the den with me. I love all you bipeds, quadrupeds, and even the occasional dinosaurs so much. So please hit that like button if you did like this. The more the numbers go up, the more people will see it, and the more people that will hear these stories. And of course, please drop a comment and so we can satiate the algorithm that we have to feed, and to let everybody know what you think of this video. And of course, if you know anybody who likes scary stories, creepypastas, or anything like that, please share this video with them. Let's get the word out and get my channel's numbers up even more. I'm now up over 240, which is amazing, and my Baby in Yellow video has been viewed more than 2,000 times, which completely blows my mind. That's just outrageous even for my numbers. I'm used to it being somewhere around like 80, 90 to 100 views on a video, which I'm perfectly happy with. But last I saw, it's over 2.1k views, so that's just amazing. Thank you all so much for your help and support. You guys are so awesome, and I wouldn't be doing this without you guys. And if you want to help out even more, please remember, anytime you go out and you have to be in the public, please remember to mask up, no matter what they say. The numbers might be going down in some places, but they're going up in others, and there's a new variant that's out there now that is supposedly more contagious. And a lot of this has a lot of like inkling reminders of like the Spanish flu if you go back and look at what happened then. So please keep yourself healthy and those around you. And to help out even more with that, remember, please, if you haven't yet, go out and get your vaccination or your booster shot, because that will definitely help your body fight whatever is going around, and it will let your body know this is a bad thing to have in my body and fight it. And of course, if you can, please try and keep social distancing. The further apart we are from each other, the harder it will be to spread any bug or anything like that that's going around, and it will keep us all healthier in the end. And it'll protect those out there who have an allergy or for some other reason cannot get the vaccine or the booster shot. And we do know that there is a certain kitty in the den that has that same effect. So let's keep the world safe for our kitty. And once again, I love all you bipeds, quadrupeds, and even the occasional dinosaurs so much. And until next time, Wolf out.